Hi everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Ella Reynolds and I am a new business account handler at Protect My Let. And we are here with Lucy Cohen, who is the co-founder of Mazuma Money.
Hi Ella, thanks for having me on.
That's okay, no worries. Thank you very much for being here. So Lucy is here today to give us some sort of expert advice on management for landlords regarding tax. So we'll be covering things like tax tips for landlords, for new and experienced landlords. We're going to cover making tax digital, and any benefits for managing your properties online. So what we'll do then, we'll just dive in with the first question, if that's
Yeah, great.
okay.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem.
obviously, tax is something that no one really wants to think about, but it's something that landlords should definitely think about. What's your sort of advice on why they should think of themselves as a business?
Well, they are running a business. So I know that landlords sort of fall into two categories. So you've got people who do regard it as a business and they are deliberately going out and acquiring rental properties and building up their portfolio. And those landlords will probably regard that as a business. But then you've got accidental landlords, so people who bought a property, moved on to their next property, decided to keep the one before it and started renting it out, or met a partner, moved in with them, rent out the old property. It's a really common story. And even if you are an accidental landlord or you've only got a very small portfolio of, say, one or two properties, thinking of yourself like a business in many ways means you take it seriously. So you start thinking about, am I charging the correct commercial rate? Am I getting the right return for this? What are my expenses looking at? Am I making enough profit? Do I want to make loads of profit? Because that means I'm going to end up paying more tax. Remembering that the interest you can claim as a deduction against your tax now is far less than it used to be. That started to be restricted by HMRC a few years ago. So whilst becoming an accidental landlord is sort of less attractive than it used to be, there are still some real benefits, and you'll reap those benefits if you think of yourself as a business. Think about how you're going to run that property, what your income's going to be, what your expenses are going to be. If you need repairs and maintenance, how are you covering that? Are you doing that work yourself? Are you hiring a firm in to do it? All this stuff are decisions that a business would make about their office building or their shop front, or decisions about staff, how much to pay them, what leave am I giving them. Think of it in exactly the same way. And it means you're just going to get what you want out of your investment in a property. And that's why I think that landlords need to kind of, even if you've just got the one property, be more active in looking after the figures, really. It is about looking after the figures. Look after those figures, and you'll find that you'll get the return that you want from your investment.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's really helpful actually, Lucy, because like you said, some landlords falling into it accidentally. Then you've got other landlords that are huge, big portfolio landlords.
Mm.
So I think maybe the ones that have just fallen into it and only have the one property probably don't look at it as much as a business. But like you said, it's definitely probably really helpful to look at it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's going to, what the profit you make on that is going to affect directly your tax bill. So you really should be looking at this because you want to make sure that you go into tax season or doing your tax return prepared for what your bill's likely to be. And looking at your property like a business is going to help you do that.
Amazing. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so one of the changes is making tax digital. Can we talk about that? And is there anything that can give us a bit of insight for that at all?
Yeah, so making tax digital is the biggest change to tax filing in a generation. It is a huge overhaul that HMRC have done of the tax filing system. It started a few years back with VAT. So if we do have any landlords that are VAT registered, they will already have been affected by this. So previously, if you were over the VAT threshold, which as of today is £85,000 in turnover, you would have had to file under the Making Tax Digital rules. Now, even if you're below that threshold and you're VAT registered, you have to file under these rules. Making Tax Digital doesn't just stop at VAT though. It's been pushed back a couple of years. It was due to go live for everybody else in 2024. It's been pushed back a couple of years, probably because we've had, COVID and all kinds of other stuff going on and a bit of a revolving door at number 10. So it's been pushed down the priority list. But in 2026, it will go live for everybody else, and will eventually be phased in. And basically, what the Making Tax Digital rules mean are that you can no longer file your tax return yourself on the HMRC website. So there'll be loads of landlords out there which will have logged onto the HMRC site. Again, back to sometimes these accidental landlords. They will have logged onto the HMRC website once a year, done their tax return and filed it themselves. You can no longer do that. you also have to keep digital records. So that means you can't just have a ledger book with all your stuff written down and that's your proof. It has to be kept in a digital format. And an approved digital format means something that can't be easily edited, or you can't track history of something that you can't track history of changes on. It has to be a kind of HMRC approved digital format. It's called digital record keeping. Now, if you're VAT registered, you'll already be doing this. And those that are VAT registered were less directly affected by this change because they're used to filing something quarterly. They're used to filing a quarterly VAT return, and the likelihood is that they are using some sort of software or an accountant to do that. So it wasn't a massive, it wasn't a massive change in procedure. It wasn't a massive upheaval to their lives. However, when it starts being phased in for just self-assessment, and it will be at different income levels, depending on what your kind of overall income is, you will no longer just be filing a tax return once a year. You'll be filing a minimum of 5 times a year. So you'll have to file, if you meet the criteria, you'll have to file quarterly, and then you'll have to do a roundup return HMRC. You can't file directly on the HMRC website. You have to use approved software or a provider or an accountant to do that filing for you. So that is a gigantic change to the tax system. It's the biggest change to the tax system that I've seen, certainly in my career. And it's something you really need to be aware of, because even though 2026 seems like it's a long way in the future, it's going to be here before we know it. We're already in 23. So before you know it, it'll be Christmas. So you need to, it'll be Halloween then Christmas, and suddenly we're in 24. So you need to start behaving as if you're going to be doing these filings now. So start looking for a good piece of software. Start looking for a good accountant who will take that stuff away for you. Start getting into the habit of keeping your books in order on a monthly basis. If you start those good habits now, if they switched MTD on tomorrow and you were told, right, we've changed our mind, we're doing it from tomorrow, you'd be ready. It doesn't matter. What you don't want is leaving it to the last minute, scrambling to get your processes in order, and then it being a massive upheaval. And this is, again, going back to why landlords really should think of themselves as a business. A business will have in systems, procedures, softwares, accountants to help them with this stuff. If you start thinking of yourself like a business and you start engaging with people to take care of, let's face it, the thing you're probably not an expert at, you're going to make your life a whole lot easier for relatively little money.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you just mentioning there about obviously the fact that they're probably going to be a bit apprehensive as well, especially if it's something that's a big change for everybody and it's something that some landlords may not be used to. So are you guys at Mazuma able to offer a lot of advice and help and support with that?
Yeah, so we've actually developed our own software that is approved for making tax digital by HMRC. So we already file under the HMRC HMRC MTD rules. That's a mouthful. But yeah, we already file under the making tax digital rules. And the way that our clients work, we collect data from our clients monthly as default. So all of our clients are already there, but we offer people advice on things like, what is a digital record? Can I keep stuff in a spreadsheet? Can I keep it in a box of receipts on my desk or in a shoe box on top of the wardrobe? We help people with that digitization process. We kind of roughly say we sort of categorize people into 2 categories. You're probably either pro tech or no tech. So if you're pro tech, you're using apps, you're happy with internet banking, you probably got some like, you might have I won't name any banks because sponsorship, but you probably got a challenger bank on your app on your phone, all this kind of stuff. If you're no tech, you might be a landlord, you might be an accidental landlord. Maybe your main job isn't something where you're sat at a computer all day. My family, the reason I started Mazuma was because my family are no tech people, and they're actors, dancers, musicians, artists. They're people who work with their hands and their bodies, and they're creatives. They're not at a desk all day. Unlike me, I was the black sheep. It was my big rebellion, being an accountant. So it was but it's built for people like them, because they might not want to spend their weekends sat plonking stuff into software. It's not what they do. It's not what they enjoy. It's stressful for them. So we set up Mazuma to help transition those people. And unbeknownst to us, when we started 17 years ago, this change was coming. But now this change in tax filing is here and is on the horizon. Actually, the way we work is ideally suited to help those people transition into a digital world, even if they are reluctant or they just don't want to. Like, we don't all have to be mad about our iPhones, do we? We can
No.
we don't all have to love it.
No, I know, I understand. Oh, well, that's really interesting, Lucy. And I think a lot of people watching will that's probably ease them a little bit and probably settle their nerves slightly to think, oh, you've got someone here that will be able to help and assist in every way possible. Because it can be, quite a daunting experience, especially if it's something that no one's ever touched on before.
Yeah,
Um,
and tax itself is daunting. We're all. I think the biggest disservice that the general public ever heard was when HMRC used to run adverts saying tax doesn't have to be taxing. Well, it is though, because it's stressful filing your tax return and you don't know what is and isn't tax deductible. And as we know, the rules are always changing. Any landlords out there that have been filing tax returns for a few years have noticed that the allowances they can claim on their mortgage interest, for example, have changed.
mhm,
So you need an advice. You either need to be consciously keeping on top of that stuff, which takes up bandwidth. And if you're not a full-time landlord, you've got other stuff to be doing. That's on top of what you already do, or you have to be engaging with someone to do that for you. And I'd always recommend that. I'm a big fan of outsourcing everything I can. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at.
yeah.
And I get people to play to their unique abilities. And I think that's what, if you're a landlord, accidental or purposeful, you should definitely do that. You're great at properties. Let us handle the numbers. Let us bean counters do the rest.
Yes, lovely. No, I completely agree. Are there any other expenses that landlords or property investors are unaware of that they could be making tax savings on at all?
Yeah, so I think it's looking at what is appropriate for the type of property you have, and the sort of agreement that you have with your tenants. You need to be really careful about deciding or categorizing what is repairs and maintenance versus what is actually improving the overall structural integrity of the building. So let's say the bathroom is a bit run down, you rip out the bathroom, you put in a new one. Lots of landlords might think, oh, great, that's all going to come off my taxable profit this year. It might not necessarily, because actually that's replacing a whole bathroom. That might be only accounted for when you go to sell the property and it comes out of your capital gains calculation in terms of what you've gained. So things like that, it's really important to distinguish the difference between repairs and maintenance and capital expenditure. And
Mhm.
that's where we see most landlords getting stuck, is they'll go, great, this bathroom was cheaper. I was thinking of putting a new bathroom in this property anyway. Perfect time to do it. I'll get it off my tax bill. Not necessarily.
Okay.
So this is where it comes into speaking to an accountant, making sure um, the spend that you're going to make. Look, if you have to put in a new bathroom because it's fallen to pieces and you'd never rent it out otherwise, then you have to put in a new bathroom. I'd never advise somebody not to spend money you need to spend just for the sake of tax, or otherwise to spend money you don't need to spend to try to reduce your tax bill. That's the fool's way, and that way does tax woe lie, because you're spending £100 to save 20%, save 20. Unless you need to spend the money, don't do it. But think about how you do it and do it smartly.
Mhm.
Think about that difference between repairs and maintenance, between kind of ongoing maintenance, between capital expenditure, um, and look at how that's going to affect your tax position. And if you're not sure, and if you're like, oh, I could do it this year, I could do it next year, but I'm thinking of selling it next year, maybe I'll push it over. Remembering that the tax deadline, self-assessment deadline or self-assessment year runs to the 5th of April. Usually towards the kind of February, March time is when we start asking people, do you want to, were you thinking of doing something kind of in April? Because you might want to do it now because, your tax this year is looking a little bit higher, might reduce your profit down a bit. You
Mhm.
made more profit. Perhaps if you're going to spend some money, now is a great time to do it. It's all about what the categorization of expense is going to be is in HMRC's eyes, and the timing of doing that in the right tax year. You don't want to end up pushing a spend the next tax year by 5 days because you weren't organized, and so you
Mhm.
don't get that benefit of the spend for a whole other year. So those are really the best ways of ensuring that you're being as tax efficient as you can be with your property business.
Well, thank you very much for that insight. That was really helpful. So obviously dealing with landlords tax day in, day out, have you got any sort of top best practice tips that you can give our landlords at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Go back to what we talked about at the beginning of this, which is treat it like a business.
Mhm.
Think about this in a commercial sense. Think about the timing of your spend. Think about the categorization of your spend. And think about the profit you'll make from your property income alongside any other income you have. What's really important is to when you do have property income, regardless of how big that is to look at it in the context of your overall tax position. You can't look at it in isolation, because as individuals, we've all got different tax codes, we've all got different things that are taken from source or not. It's why the advice around this kind of in this scenario is fairly generic, because what works for one person won't work for the next.
Yeah.
Don't listen to your mate down the pub. Goodness sake. We hear a lot of, my mate down the pub's got 85 properties and makes 18 million pound a year and he never pays a penny in tax.
Yeah.
I guarantee it's not the same for you and your two flats. Like, it's going to be completely different. You've got completely different scenarios. Always speak to a qualified accountant. Speak to somebody who's got experience of this. Get organized. Have a digital record keeping system, whether that's just taking pictures of or scanning your receipts and keeping them in a saved folder on your computer, whether that's using somebody who'll digitize that stuff for you, whether that's investing in a piece of software or an accountancy provider who'll do that for you. Start using these systems now before it's mandated that you have to. And when you start doing that, you start getting regular visibility of your numbers. This is all about numbers. Sorry, folks, but it's all about the numbers. I'm obsessed with numbers. Always have been. It's all about understanding your numbers. You don't want to, if you're one of these people, and I think probably quite a few people listen to it will be that person that go, yep, that's me. You get your tax done at the end of the year and you go, oh, that's a surprise. You don't want to be in that place. You should already know what's going to be on there. You should have an idea of what's going to be on there months before you get that tax return done. And that's where kind of staying on top of stuff is one of my biggest tips for people. Sometimes it's ripping the band-aid off. Sometimes it's a little bit like, putting your jeans on after Christmas and you realize you had too many quality streets. Sometimes you just got to do it and deal with it. And once you've done it, you can make progress. It's all about making sure you've got visibility of your numbers, whatever your scenario is, and then getting people who know how to do this stuff to help plan with you. That's one of the most important things. That's the biggest tip I can give is to, if this isn't your bag, if you don't love numbers, if you don't love getting down in a spreadsheet, don't get someone else to do it for you and get them to tell you your position and where you're at, because you'll take that out of your bandwidth. It's a burden off your mind. You can sleep well at night knowing someone's handling it. If you do love numbers, there's tons of great software and stuff out there that you can use for this sort of thing, loads of it. But get organized, get digitized, know your expenses, know your timings, and work with people who know how to do this stuff properly.
That's amazing. I think there's some really, really helpful points there, to be honest with you, Lucy. And yes, so thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, and we really appreciate it. And if anybody has any other queries, I think you can visit the Mazuma page on our website, which will have the link here.